Hey, welcome to another episode of Morning Coffee and Marketing. And today we're going to talk about the most reliable way to turn normal, average, everyday, blah products and services into powerful, profitable, high ticket products and services without making much of a change to the actual product or service itself. Maybe I should have put that into the description of the video, but you only get that if you take a second to watch it. So, anyway, what we're going to do is without changing the product or service. So here's what we do. I'm going to give you an example. First, I'm going to tell you how to do it. Then I'm going to give you a couple examples. Maybe I should give you a couple examples and then break them down for you. Let's do that. I'll give you a couple examples, and then I will break them down for you and explain why they work. Right. So, first example comes from my roofing company. I owned a roofing company several years ago. When I bought it, it was doing a couple hundred thousand dollars a year in sales. It was in August of 2010. In 2012, we did 1.94 million. Pardon me. So that is pretty powerful sales growth. And the way that we did that was one of the ways is that first we got good at generating leads and at closing sales and the sales process and etc. But one of the fantastic ways that we did it was we raised our prices. We didn't make that big a difference to the roof. I mean, we made a couple of changes, did a couple things that highlighted our why our roofs were better, used a little bit better materials, but we almost doubled the price, right? So, I mean, most people were selling roofs at the time for about $250 a square, and we were selling roofs for $400 a square, or $450 a square meaning 100 square feet. It's a roofing term. It's a 10 by 10 section. So, a little bit better materials, a little bit higher material costs, but nothing that would justify almost doubling the price. So how did we do it? Well, number one, the better materials gave us a differentiation, right? So that's one of the big things. That's one of the big lessons is we differentiated ourselves from everybody else in the market. That's step one. The next thing we did was we added in several small, very cost-effective measures. So, for example, let me just give you when we when we did a job, we would have an extra helper on the job, and that extra helper's job on the roofing site was to just spread tarps starting at the house and spreading out about 6 feet from the house so that anything that fell off the roof landed on the tarps. And then they would go around and clean up what landed on the tarps. At the end of the day, they would roll up the tarps, and we would dump everything from the tarp into a garbage bin or into the dumpster, and then we'd go. Now that seems like nothing. You say, well, that's not a big deal, but nobody does that. No roofers do that. The other thing is that we guaranteed that we would check the yard 3 times every day, and we did. We rolled around with a very powerful magnet. We rolled around the yard 6 feet from the house 3 times every single day. Now, once again, that took an extra half hour. It was not a big deal. It certainly didn't cost anything, but it justified almost doubling the price. So the number one way, the first way to double the price is to get better materials, get a better product. But you get, even if the materials cost you a little bit more, you get infinitely more out of. You can charge infinitely more than, so they cost you an extra 10% or an extra 15%, but you can double your prices, right? So keep in mind, it's an extra 10 or 15% of cost, not an extra 10 or 15% of revenue. So your costs go up by 10 or 15%, your revenue goes up by 80, 90, 100%. Right. Better product, better service, better materials. The next way is by adding some VIP or some concierge style pieces to your package. In the roofing business, we like I said, we had somebody who just spread tarps out, and the tarps would catch everything. Now you think, well, that's so stupid. Like, why wouldn't everybody do that? I don't know, because they don't want to have an extra guy on the site, because they whatever. But I mean, it's a guy. It's $100 a day for a helper, for a laborer, and some tarps, and we got to almost double our prices because of those kind of touches. Now, in the animal remediation business, now in this case, we were justifying massively large prices. I mean, we were charging a lot of money to go in and do animal remediations. So the first thing was that we were the only person who specialized in that particular job, in that particular niche. There were some other companies that did it, but we were the only one who specialized in it. So that's one way, is that we differentiated ourselves by being the only company that does this, professionally and solely. The other thing that we did was we went and dug up, and started following a lot of I mean, there are copious regulations in contracting, OSHA regulations and Center for Disease Control. Well, the Center for Disease Controls don't give regulations, but they give recommendations about how to deal with certain things, and various health departments and this sort of thing. So we went and dug up, because we were in the animal remediation business. Animal remediation meaning cleaning up and repairing houses after after animals got in the attic. We were dealing with biohazards. Technically, they were biohazards, dead animals and droppings and this sort of thing. So we would go. We went out and we searched regulations and recommendations, and then we started following those regulations and recommendations to the letter. That differentiated us, because suddenly we were seen as the professionals in the industry, instead of a company that kind of does this occasionally but doesn't really pay much attention to it. So one way to increase your prices massively is to find a very specific niche where there's little or no competition, be the company that specializes in that niche, and be perceived as the absolute professional in that niche. That it massively increases your the amount of money that you can charge for the exact same work. The other thing that we did in this case, we were on a job site dealing with quote unquote biohazards, and we started sealing off the job site. So if we were going into the attic through the garage, we would take that yellow crime scene tape that you've seen, and we'd put that all around the garage, and please stay, 6 feet away from the job site. And we would we covered everything with plastic, and sealed the plastic around the edges, and put a tube around put a tube that dropped down from the attic space, and put a negative air pressure air scrubber. So we would seal. We put basically a machine that sucks air out of a sealed environment and filters the air with a HEPA filter. All that stuff. None of the specifics of that matter. Here's what matters. About 90% of that was theater, right? So we would put on a show for the client. Now, a lot of the stuff was good idea, right? I mean, it didn't hurt anything, but it cost very little, maybe $100, $150. You're talking about jobs that are $20,000 and $30,000 high profit jobs. So, you spend an extra $100 in Visqueen, or an extra $150 or $200 in Visqueen, a little bit of labor, rent or maintenance on an air scrubber. Basically, you spend an extra $400 or $500, but it justifies now $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 for a job where somebody else might only charge $5,000 or $6,000 or $8,000 for that same job. So we make the The theater involved in that job makes the job far more valuable. So those are just a few examples. So what are we talking about? Number one, improve the product, because the extra cost of improvements will will allow you to raise revenue, raise the what you can charge far more than it's going to cost you extra, right? Add a concierge or VIP kind of feeling to what you're doing. Once again, you'll be able to charge far more than the little bit that costs, right? Number three, niche yourself into a very specific market with very little competition and be perceived as the absolute professional in that very tight niche. Niching is nothing new, but the added part of following a few steps, a few guidelines to make sure that you are perceived as the absolute top-notch professional in that niche is the difference. And finding a niche that has very little or no competition, but where the customers have need, even if they don't know that they have need right now, but your prospective clients have a need. And number four is theater. Put on some theater for your prospects, for your customers. Make it appear far more difficult. Make it seem far more complicated. Add a little bit of mystery, add a little bit of entertainment, add a little bit of, if possible, add a little something that makes them a little queasy or makes them worried to look in. They don't want to see in the sausage factory what's actually happening. So add a little bit of theater. So there are four ways that you can massively increase your revenue and massively increase your prices on what is otherwise a kind of ho-hum, blah, boring product or service. So that's a little more nuts and bolts than I usually do with you guys. I hope you enjoy it. If you do, leave a comment, leave a like. Let me know that you found value in the nuts and bolts stuff. Obviously, I'm doing a very general video here, so I can't deal with your specific circumstance. It's up to you to translate what I've given you into your business. And trust me, whether you're doing a product or service business, whether you're consulting, whether you have some other kind of client service, or whether you have some other kind of product, you can translate everything that I've told you here into your business. So don't be lazy and say, oh, he's talking about contracting. That has nothing to do with me, blah, blah, blah. Don't be lazy and do that. Do the work and make sure that you translate what I've given you into your business. It will work. You will make more money. And then you can come back and thank me later. Talk to you soon.